Good morning. Today I want to talk about the lunar month from June 14th through July 14th. And rather than talking about the world, America, and Trump in one long video, I'm going to do as my wife has recommended and break this up into three separate videos. So this first one is on the lunar month and the world. So let's see if I can share my screen here. And I just need to get rid of a panel or two. Okay, and here we go. This is the lunar month for the world, June 14th through July 14th. And I'm going to start with a preview, or review rather, of what happened during the past lunar month. So these were my predictions, a summary. I said the first few days of this lunar month may see some aggression and wounding, but healing actions are also possible. This was due to Mars conjunct Chiron is pretty strong, almost exact, at the beginning of the last lunar month that began on May 16th. And that has set a theme for the month that followed. And we have certainly seen a lot of action, military action, that has resulted in wounding. We are also seeing and have been seeing action to help heal things. So that has been present pretty much throughout the month. I also said unexpected events or changes may occur around May 22nd as the result of Sun conjunct Uranus. I said aggressive actions or accidents may return on May 25th, Mars square Pluto. The last 2 weeks of the lunar month, June 1st through June 14th, may see more war, protest, revolution, or other forms of disruption, or even positive change. Uranus square lunar nodal axis. And then I wrote that June 9th through June 12th will be more intense than usual. On those days, we'll have Mercury square Saturn. We still have Uranus square the lunar nodal axis, and also Venus square Chiron. This can bring about more frustration, more delays, and more wounding to our values and to our pocketbook, the things we need to survive. And of course, inflation is up quite a bit now. Okay, here's some of the things that happened during the previous lunar month. With regard to Mars conjunct Chiron, there was an Israeli strike that assassinated the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The World Health Organization declared an Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and also Uganda. 5 unions representing over 3,500 workers for the Long Island Railroad went on strike. Fortunately, that strike did not last very long and some negotiated agreement was made. Also, on May 18th, 5 people, including 2 gunmen, were killed in a mass shooting at a mosque in San Diego, California. With regard to Sun conjunct Uranus on May 22nd, we can expect a lot of unexpected actions or reversals. And some of the headlines that occurred were Department of Justice indicted former Cuban President Raul Castro. There's a chemical leak at an aerospace plant in Garden Grove, California, and 40,000 residents had to evacuate. There's a gas explosion at a coal mine in China, killed 82 people. That was right on May 22nd. Tulsi Gabbard unexpectedly resigned as Director of National Intelligence, citing her husband's recent bone cancer diagnosis. And on May 23rd, there was a White House shooting. A gunman opened fire at a security booth outside the White House complex in Washington, D.C., and then he was fatally shot by the Secret Service. Regarding Mars square Pluto on May 25th, something like that always increases the likelihood of some violent action or accidents. And there were 19 people injured in Atlanta Beach, South Carolina, during a stampede at an annual motorcycle rally. And the U.S. Central Command reported, quote, self-defense strikes on Iran, saying that the ceasefire is still in place. We're just bombing them for self-defense. And several Iranian soldiers were reportedly killed. And according to Iranian sources, prior to the U.S. attacks, the Iranian army targeted a ship at sea. Yeah, so there was an escalation, some more skirmishes in the Middle East around this aspect Mars squared Pluto. And then we've had Uranus square the lunar nodal axis from June 1st to June 14th. That can result in sudden changes, disruption, chaos, war, or protests, revolutionary things. And there were protests in Albania over this proposed luxury development involving Jared Kushner and his firm to develop this beautiful island off Albania, apparently. And there has also been broader discontent with the prime minister's government in Albania. Let's see. Also, the Trump administration suddenly announced it would walk away from a $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund after getting a lot of pushback from GOP members of Congress and a lingering court battle demanding an explanation for the arrangement. 7 people, including the suspect, died in a shooting in Iowa. In a surprise reversal of past actions, the House supported a resolution limiting Trump's Iran war powers, and Senate Republicans stripped $1 billion of funding for security upgrades to the proposed White House ballroom. Also, Iran claimed to have launched missiles and drones at U.S. targets as on June 3rd. The Kennedy Center ordered staff to remove all references to Donald Trump's name from the building following a court ruling. And the first 2 weeks of June have seen stronger attacks on Kyiv by Russia, counterattacks on St. Petersburg and Russia by Ukraine, attacks back and forth between Iran and the USA, and attacks back and forth between Iran and Israel. Now, during this period from June 9th to June 12th, things got more intense as a result of Mercury square Saturn and Venus square Chiron joining in with Uranus square the lunar nodal axis. And during this period, we've seen an increase in these back and forth attacks between the USA, Israel, and Iran. And on June 11th, Trump threatened to bomb Iran very hard tonight, but he backed down several hours later. And at the moment, it looks like we're entering into another one of those tenuous ceasefire agreements with some sort of memorandum of understanding to be signed on Sunday. After it's signed, I hope we all get to see the text. Trump has touted things that Iran will do according to this memorandum, such as opening up the Strait of Hormuz and allowing freedom of the seas to prevail again. Iran is saying that they're going to get several billion dollars in freed up assets and reparation money for the damage that's been done to their country. So, again, I hope the full text is released so we can find out what's actually going on here. Now let's look at the world for this lunar month from June 14th to July 14th. And here's a quick look at transits for this lunar month. And I should point out I'm using very tight orbs here in many instances. So, for example, this shows Uranus square the north node, which means it's also square the south node, the lunar nodal axis. My graph shows that petering out after a couple of days. Well, remember, this shows when that aspect is strongest. And I'm using very tight orbs. But this aspect, even though the orb won't be so tight, it's probably going to linger throughout the lunar month, as we will see. So some of these aspects here, they could really begin to exert their effects before the dates indicated down here or last longer than what my graph indicates. But certainly, this revolutionary fervor, this desire for war, even though it may linger, it's going to lessen in strength within a couple of days of the start of the new lunar month. And interestingly, I believe the start of this lunar month will probably coincide with the signing of a memorandum of understanding between America and Iran. I believe that's going to be on the day of the new lunar month. Now, aside from that, you really don't see much here, so it looks like the first week of the lunar month will be relatively calm. Not completely calm, it never is, but compared to what's come before, what may come after, there is probably this space during which people will be collecting their breaths. Now, following this, as we get into the last few days of June and the first week or week and a half of July, there is going to be more tension again. We have Mars making a semi-square to Saturn, lasting a few days. Jupiter square Chiron, lasting longer, and that is probably going to cause some wounding in the world. It could also result in healing for the world, but wounding is usually more likely. Then we have Mars conjunct Uranus. That is very concerning and disconcerting because this greatly increases the chances of sudden conflict or war. So that lasts from the last few days of June through about the first week and a half of July. And near the start of this on, let's see, June 29th, it looks like, Mars is going to be square the lunar nodal axis. So end of June, beginning of July, that looks like the most dangerous period here. That may be when this current ceasefire memorandum all falls apart once again. Now, aside from that, once we get into July, some things become much stronger. In particular, we're going to have this minor grand trine between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto that is really going to become strong in July for the second half of this lunar month and beyond. And we have Neptune sextile Pluto, Uranus trine Pluto, and Uranus sextile Neptune. We also have Chiron making a sextile to the north node, which means it'll be making a trine to the south node. So What this minor grand trine involving Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto is all about is it's going to help open up people's minds. Some people's minds will open up just a little bit. They'll become a little bit more progressive in thought. And this has been building for quite some time, actually. And we've already seen examples of that. For instance, as I always point out, for goodness sake, Marjorie Taylor Greene is now totally against Trump. Her eyes and her mind have been opened. And we have seen Republicans in Congress, in both the House and the Senate, more and more defying Trump and voting against his wishes. So people are starting to open up. Some will open up a lot, all will open up a little, and then there will be some who become significantly more enlightened in the months to follow. But as this gains strength, it's quite possible that more and more people will quit focusing on Donald Trump and the turmoil that he is causing. They may focus on that less and less, and then focus more and more on simply being kind to other people. And that's something interesting to think about. There are horrible things happening in America and the world right now. In my opinion, horrible things as a result of the actions of Donald Trump. But we don't want to get completely attached to that conflict, so attached to that conflict that we cannot allow anything to take its place. Now is the time in our minds to let something overcome and overwhelm that conflict. So this will be a period in which I think it would be good for all of us to quit worrying and thinking about the world, America, and Trump, and instead just focus on giving to others, being kind to others, helping others with random acts of kindness, giving to charity, giving to yourself, experience and re-experience that joy from connecting with others and knowing that we are part of something larger than ourselves. And each person that would be like just a little drop of water, but with millions doing this around the globe, all of those little drops of water add up to an ocean of grace and mercy and kindness. So allow yourselves to be aware of that, focus on that, and develop that as the month goes on. Now, toward the very end, Jupiter will have moved into Leo. And at the end, it will be in opposition to Pluto. So this is a point at which there, let me say it this way, with Jupiter in Leo, people are going to be wanting some recreation, some enjoyment, some relief from the stress of the past several months. They're going to want to express their own personal creativity, create things on their own. To some extent, in some way, they are going to be acting in opposition to the powers that be. For instance, you may want to travel to certain places overseas for your recreation, for your enjoyment, and the powers that be, Pluto and Aquarius, they may say, no, you can't go to this or that country because of Ebola or other concerns with that particular country. So anyway, that is the overview for this lunar month. I'm expecting maybe a calm first week, followed by some more tensions, possible aggression, and that could be the result of failed negotiations with Iran again. I think there will be a definitely a heightened chance for aggression and wounding during the last few days of June and the first week of July. But then we're also moving into a very wonderful period as this minor grand trine between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto becomes stronger and stronger. And on the last couple of days of the lunar month, there may be some sort of protest or clash between what individuals want in order to grow and feel good versus what the powers of be want. Okay, this shows more the day by day transits, mostly inner planets as they become exact. And one interesting thing is we're going to have a lot of sign changes this month. On the 19th, Chiron goes into Taurus. That could put more of a focus on people trying to heal their finances, their financial situation, to get the resources they need to survive, and also a little bit more emphasis on finding joy in the material world. On the 21st, that'll be the solstice as the sun moves into Cancer, and there's more of a focus on family and one's personal environment. On June 28th, Mars will go into Gemini, and this may actually be good because Gemini is all about communication, Mars is about action. So we might get into some negotiations of some sort that actually produce something good. If not, it's just going to be a bunch of yelling back and forth. Uh, let's see, on the 29th, Mercury goes retrograde. On July 6th, Neptune goes retrograde. So, in some ways, we're going to be moving inward to think about things more. We have a few planets going into, or at least one planet going into a fire sign, but the others are going to into Earth or water, Chiron into Taurus, Sun into Cancer. Uh, let's see, Venus into Virgo. All of those shifts are going to move our energy a little bit more inward. So, with a couple of planets turning retrograde, with 3 planets going into Earth and water signs, I expect not only will there be a change of focus among people, but people will become a little bit more reserved, introverted, and introspect in their thoughts and actions. And actually, we have 2 planets moving into air and fire signs. We have Mars going into Gemini, and on the 29th, Jupiter going into Leo the same day that Mercury turns retrograde. As I said, with Jupiter in Leo, people are going to want and need some recreation, some relief from all the stress they've been feeling, and they're going to be wanting to express their personal creativity. Though they may run afoul of the powers that be, because that will be in opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. Now, from the 30th through maybe all the way up to the 6th, things will be more tense, because on June 30th, we have Mars square the lunar nodal axis, and on the 1st, Jupiter square Chiron. That usually brings some major wounding somewhere in the world. On the 3rd, we have Mars conjunct Uranus. This is when things could become really combative. If we're lucky, things will become super creative with Mars and Uranus and Gemini, but we're much more likely to see rebellion, revolution, particularly involving America, either war at home or abroad. So Mars conjunct Uranus, that's something to watch out for. And on July 6th, we have Saturn square, or Sun square Saturn, which is going to make things a little bit more restrictive. And then the rest of the lunar month doesn't look too bad after we get through that first week. Okay, now let's look at the new moon, full moon, and the quarter moons. And here I'm using wider orbs than I did back here. So that's when we'll see things that linger for a while. And sure enough, we start the lunar month with a very strong square between Uranus and the lunar nodal axis. So the previous lunar month had something of a focus on actions that wound. This lunar month is going to be full of chaos and surprises. And with Uranus involved, that could also refer to revolutionary actions and protests from people. But at the same time, we have that Uranus, Neptune, Pluto minor grand trine forming again. That is what's opening up people's minds, urging them to be kind to one another. And this is what is allowing cultivators and meditators to make certain leaps forward in their practices, and some people becoming much more fully enlightened during this period. And fortunately, we have a second minor grand trine that's being formed by Uranus, Neptune, and Venus. So there will definitely be a focus on visions of peace and tranquility this month, and trying to use creative ways to achieve that vision. And let's see what else we could say about this particular chart. We do have a strong inconjunct between Venus and the lunar nodal axis, making a quincunx semi-sextile here. So yes, people will have to make adjustments to their thinking in order to bring about some of the more peaceful outcomes. Let's see. Anything else going on? Well, there is something. It's going to become stronger, I think, in maybe the next chart. But we have actually not only a square between Uranus and the south node, but each of those is making a pretty good semi-square at this point to Mercury. I don't have it listed over here, but let's see. Will I list that soon? Huh, I don't list it per se, but nonetheless, this suggests some positive things that could happen. Instead of going to war, we may be in a period of intense negotiations where we have to be very creative in order, as I said, to attain peace. So we might also expect, or at least hope for, creative negotiations, uh, which will be intense, but which wind up being talks that address the security concerns of both partners. And that could be either USA, Israel, and Iran, or Ukraine and Russia, or some other parties that I haven't mentioned or thought about. Now, one more thing that's going to be going on before we go to the next slide is at the time of the moon, there are a lot of 11 harmonic aspects and also a lot of 7 harmonic aspects. The 7 harmonic aspects suggests focus on something like the focus you have as you get ready for a first date. And the 11 harmonic aspects suggest something that we're eager to do or eager to complete. And that could have to do with the situation in Iran or Ukraine and Russia, for example. Okay, as we get to the first quarter moon, we're going to see a lot of things that continue throughout the month. We still have Uranus making a square to the lunar nodal axis. It's not as tight as what I indicated here, but it's within an orb that most people will tend to agree with, only a couple of minutes from being, or a couple of degrees from being exact. We're also seeing Jupiter square Chiron gain strength, and that will probably bring about some wounding during the first week of the lunar month, or by the time we get to the quarter moon, the second week, I should say. But on the good side, we still have this Uranus, Neptune, Pluto minor grand trine. We have the Sun making a trine and a sextile to the lunar nodal axis. And we also have a Sun south node, Chiron minor grand trine. So that is going to really help relieve a lot of tension and open up people's minds to a higher enlightenment, which is what Chiron is actually about. It is that drive within us that looks at the world and asks, is there all that is? And that nudges us to transcend the visible world and become aware of these less visible, more transcendent spiritual realms. To do that, the people's hard shells often have to first be broken. That's where the wounding comes in. So, as I say, you can't make a cosmic omelet, though, without cracking a few cosmic eggs. But we'll get more of the healing or spiritual side of Chiron around the time of the first quarter moon. Also, at this time, there are a lot of 11 harmonic aspects, 7 harmonic aspects, and also some 9 harmonic aspects going on. The 9 harmonic aspects are, in a way, sort of precursors to trines. They show us the potential of what could be and what might be an easy path to walk on. They also represent this desire to be in relationship with others, to take those first steps toward a relationship with others. It's like when we're getting close to asking that other person out on a date. We want to be part of something larger. So the good things are starting to expand. Again, this is a good time to just let go of all the troubles in the world. Break your attachment to thinking about those things, worrying about those things, and instead focus on the positive things you can do. Focus on your visions, focus on kindness, focus on helping others, focus on meditating, focus on transcending. Now, by the time we get to the full moon, Mars conjunct Uranus is starting to gain in strength. We're still about 3 degrees away from exact, but this is when things could get a little dicey. With Mars and Uranus both squaring the lunar nodal axis, war and revolutionary actions could be intensified. If we're lucky, this will all play out in terms of intense negotiations. Okay. And let me go back here a second. Yeah. And let's see what else is going on. We are just about to have Jupiter square Chiron become exact at the time of the full moon. So with Mars conjunct Uranus, with both of those squaring the lunar nodal axis, with the square from Jupiter to Chiron, this is a dangerous time. It's possible that we can avoid calamity, but this would probably be the most likely time for that ceasefire or negotiations between America and Iran to break down and open warfare to begin again. Or this could be the time when Ukraine and Russia both step up their war efforts. Or we could take a higher road, not return to open hostilities, but just engage in vigorous, creative, and innovative talks and negotiations with the other side. Now, we still have the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, minor grand trine in effect, Chiron, sextile, and trine the lunar nodal axis, helping to promote healing, and Mars making a strong sextile to Jupiter, which could help bring about more beneficial actions. So those are the two ways things could go on the full moon, and we could wind up getting a little bit of both. As a friend of mine says, two things can be true at once. We may get both extremes occurring in different areas at the same time. Seven harmonic and fifth harmonic are both pretty strong at this point. Fifth harmonic has a lot to do with feeling good, euphoria, that warm feeling you have after a successful first date. So that is what people are going to be wanting. There are signs of war, but people are going to be wanting to feel good again. They're going to want enjoyable, relaxing lifestyle again, where they don't have to worry so much about the future or what's going on in the present. When we get to the third quarter moon, we're going to be just past that exact square between Jupiter and Chiron. So we get exactness in between the full moon and the third quarter moon. And that's when wounding can occur. Sun is going to be square the moon, of course, because that's what happens at the third quarter moon, but it's also going to be strongly squaring Saturn, which suggests that the world will be feeling restrictions of one sort or another. I imagine that economic difficulties will both deepen and be felt more strongly as we're moving through this next lunar month. We still have Mars conjunct Uranus, but it's waning now. It's about 2 degrees of separation at this point. So even though there's still the possibility of conflict, it's receding into the background. And we have Sun making a semi-square and sesquiquadrant to the lunar nodal axis, which suggests that people will be making adjustments in order to feel more secure with their families. That's Sun in Cancer. But then we're also getting good aspects. We have Venus is conjunct the lunar nodal axis, intensifying probably the call for peace and those things that one needs to survive. Peace and resources, and peace through resources. We have Mars, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto making the minor grand trine now. So this suggests actions that are being taken as a result of these transcendent visions, innovation, and power. And we might see certain breakthroughs in technology, communication, or scientific research. We might see more successful talks going on, breakthroughs and negotiations with others. And then we have Chiron still making the sextile trine to the lunar nodal axis and Venus. So I see more attempts at healing occurring at this particular time. And so that is continuing from the full moon, this aspect, my Chiron, into the third quarter moon. And 11 harmonics, 7 harmonic angles, 5th harmonic angles, and 9th harmonic angles are going to be stronger at this time. With the addition of the 9th harmonic angles, people are going to be reaching out to connect with one another again, to establish that sense of community once again. As I said, these are also emerging or nascent trines, so people are going to be feeling pretty good. Hopefully. And as I said, they're going to reach out and want more harmony this time, connectedness with one another. Okay, and then we get to the new moon on July 14th. We have Uranus, square Venus, Jupiter, square Chiron, though it's waning quite a bit. We got just about, I think maybe exactly about 3 degrees separation. Jupiter moving into opposition with Pluto. This is when individual creativity, recreation comes somehow into conflict with the powers that be. We have some semi-squares and sesquiquadrates going on. Venus and Uranus are both going to be making a semi-square to Mercury, Sun, and Moon. So there is going to be a focus here on changes and other things, helping to feel families to be secure, financially secure, and secure otherwise. The focus here is going to be on the individual environment, whether they have extended family or not in that environment. Okay, Saturn is going to be making a semi-square to the north node, a sesquiquadrate to the south node. So there's probably going to be motivation to do some restructuring of things or reestablishing order to things. On the good side, we have the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto minor grand trine. At this point, it's very strong because each of these planets is at 4 degrees plus of their respective signs. Each one is in the 5th degree, so to speak, of that particular sign. And of course, July 21st and the next lunar month, that is going to be a particularly beneficial day, as we'll talk about next time. We also have a Uranus, Neptune, Jupiter minor grand trine, and Chiron sextile and trine the lunar nodal axis. So harmony is really increasing at this point. Desire for peace is increasing at this point. Hopefully, this also means innovative talks will be increasing and yielding fruit at this point. And hopefully, the needs of the people and their security will be addressed at this point. Again, 9, 11, and 5 harmonic angles are very prevalent at this time, so we're eager to get something done. We want this harmony, this peace in our lives, and we want to reconnect with others once again. Okay, so here's a one-page summary. The first week of the lunar month looks rather quiet in terms of major transits. However, the last few days of June and the first week of July may see more wounding, Jupiter square Chiron, and sudden violence, protest, or revolution, Mars conjunct Uranus. Once we get into July, the minor grand trine between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto will begin to get quite strong, and people's perspectives are already beginning to change, resulting in a greater awareness of how we are all connected. Sun, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Chiron are all changing signs this month, and that will produce definite shifts in how people view various things. For example, Sun in Cancer puts a focus on home and personal security. Venus in Virgo will probably put more emphasis on attending to the practical necessities we need. Mars in Gemini can lead to either intellectual stimulation or arguments. Jupiter in Leo will put an emphasis on expanding one's own creativity and enjoyment. And Chiron in Taurus may lead us to try and heal our broken economic system. And finally, both Mercury and Neptune will turn retrograde around the first week of July, suggesting a pause to reconsider some of the visions we've been pursuing. And change, Uranus, and wounding or healing, Chiron, will be major themes for this particular lunar month. Okay, and that's the end. And let me stop sharing here. Okay, and I'm back. Might be looking a little fuzzy still in this light, but that's okay. I'm old, I'm fuzzy. It's unavoidable. So that's the overview of the lunar month for the world. In my next video, I'll talk about how this lunar month will likely impact America, and then I'll do a third video on how the lunar month will impact Trump. So I hope you join me for all of those. And in the meantime, I'll just say so long and be well.